Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Rei-Lin, and I'm back with some more Armored Warfare today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the T-72B3. This is the new Tier 8 premium main battle tank that has been added to the game. Unfortunately, I'm just shy of when they removed this from the store. It was kind of like a limited sort of package deal, as usual, that they put on the website for a couple of weeks. They are running a contest with the Man O' War stuff on the website that you can participate in and potentially win the green version of this tank. You could buy the red version, which you see here, or a blue version, but they have a special contest green version. No difference statistically as far as I know, but anyway, moving along with this. And if you don't want to listen to me prattle on about the stats on this tank, you just want to see how it does in some gameplay, you can click at the top of your screen right now. That'll whisk everyone that's interested away straight to the replay, and you can see how this thing gets around the battlefield. For the rest of us, we're going to talk just a little bit about this tank and whether or not I think it is worth it. As far as spending the money, as you can see here, it's quite an expensive tank, but let's see how this thing pans out. With all the changes with Balance Patch 2.0, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for me to do the reviews, and just because of the things that they've changed to the armor layouts of all the tanks, to how ERA is working, and cage armor and all this kind of stuff, and losing the ability to show you that there's any kind of modifiers. I believe all the modifiers are now gone, and it's pretty much just their penetration versus your armor and sloping and all of that. So it is simplified back down, but in certain ways that makes it just a little bit harder to do a review because there are no real hit markers in the game. So if I get penetrated, it's hard to tell how and where I got penetrated, unless it's obviously I got shot in the butt or on the side of my tank. That's a little more obvious then. But as far as the overall performance, I think I can talk a little bit about that. As you know, I've played the last several weeks pretty much every day, playing the game, trying out every tier that I have from 1 all the way up to 10, and getting the feel for the PvE and how the tanks have changed. And more or less, I'm just going to jump in and give you more or less the same review I always did, just keeping in mind that things have changed with the gameplay. So just roll with it and we'll see where this takes us. So anyway, now that the damage is tied to the caliber of your gun, you can see at Tier 8, most of the Tier 8s have 125mm cannons or 120mm cannons. Some have 130, so there is quite a variation on the shells when it comes to damage and penetration. For this premium tank, though, we're looking at 640 damage per shot, which is pretty good for Tier 8, and the penetration is 640mm, which is also pretty good for Tier 8. It's not astronomical, but it is still pretty good. The damage per minute, 4,309, it's okay. I would like to see that be a little bit higher, especially since this is, you know, place of origin, Russia. But really what hurts this tank as far as the DPM is the long reload time. Now, when you buy this tank or get this tank in the future, if you're interested, this does come with a level 5 crew. So I've got the reload time as low as I can get it for now, including using retrofits and my crew. So it's kind of a hefty reload time, especially for a Russian tank. If that was the case, and this was as low as you're going to get for the most part, I wouldn't mind seeing the damage be up a little bit, maybe like 660 or 670. But as it stands, it's okay. It's just average, but it is a premium tank, and now the premium tanks are really starting to feel more like premium tanks from World of Tanks. Moving down to the health, 2,450. Most Russian tanks don't have the gargantuan amounts of health that something like the the M1A1s have, or like, say, the Challengers have. So again, this is kind of in the middle. It's not too bad. Hull armor does seem a little bit weak. 277mm in the front, 80 at the side, 45 at the rear. But look at the turret. The turret has 700mm of armor in the front, 90 in the side, and 46 at the rear. Now these stats, as far as the defense go, is exactly the same stats as the Tier 8 T-90A. So keep that in mind, that it is pretty much a very, very Russian turret. And if we take a quick look at the turret, you can see that it is covered in the ERA plating. This stuff is awesome. The sides have the plating. The upper front plate has the plating. The lower front plate has the plating. And the turret's got ERA all over it, and you do get smoke. So this turret, especially from the front, is extremely durable. If you have to get right up on somebody and bully them face to face and just face hug them, this thing can bounce all kinds of shots, even from tier 10s. The bots seem to be a little bit more engaged in taking out a lot of your modules now, especially your gun. So a lot of them are aiming for the front of your turrets now, which is very good for this tank because almost nothing can get through it, even rockets and missiles. So keep that in mind, that it does have a lot of ERA to bolster that 790 and 46, and it becomes very hard for them to penetrate you unless they've blown all the plates off of your turret. The hull, of course, is still weak, though, so anything that's directly just overmatching your hull, it's going to go right through. Your sides and, of course, the rear are very weak on this tank. However, when you get down to the mobility, to kind of help make up for some of that, this thing goes 61.2 kilometers an hour. It's very good acceleration from 0 to 32 in 5.3 seconds. It weighs 41,458 kilograms, so it's not exactly that heavy, but most of the Russian tanks are right around between 40 and 48,000 kilograms, so it's right in the middle. And the hull traverse, 41.65 degrees, is really fast. I've noticed, especially with this tank and the T-80U, the hull traverse is so fast you no longer need to use any kind of hull retrofits to help turn the hull, or any kind of skills on your crew to also improve the hull traverse speed. In fact, if you do that, the tank can actually get so fast on the hull traverse that it gets kind of hard to drive it, believe it or not. But with this fast hull traverse, it makes it really easy to juke shots and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle your way to victory most of the time, especially in PvE because of your weak hull. So if you can keep that front just kind of constantly moving, it becomes very hard for the bots to penetrate your hull, even though 277 millimeters doesn't seem like it's that much. Camouflage, yeah, right, main battle tank. View range, 450, not bad. The T-90A has the exact same camo, the exact same view range, and most of the same on the gun handling as well. But moving down to the gun handling, 5 degrees of gun depression, very Russian-like, especially if you played World of Tanks. Over the rear, it's only 2 degrees, so keep that in mind. Now, the accuracy for a Russian tank is actually pretty good. .11 is not bad. But that is almost as good as I can get it, especially with my crew. Aim time, extremely fast, 1.34 seconds is very good. Turret traverse is above average at 28.56 degrees per second. If this was anything above 30, it would be extremely quick. But because of the hull traverse speed, it's very easy to stay on target with this tank, so no worries there. One thing I would like to mention, because of some of the game changes, especially with a tank like this and some of the skills and retrofits, ramming damage is now extremely potent. You can do a lot of damage if you start ramming stuff to death. It doesn't take a lot of speed to do a lot of damage with a ram, but obviously the heavier your tank is, when it hits a lighter vehicle, you're going to do much more damage than if obviously it's the other way around. So keep that in mind too, that this tank can get up to a speed where ramming light tanks like the BMDs and some of the Stingrays can be very advantageous. You can do as much damage as a normal shot and then still get another shot into them. It's really fun to use a tank like the Challenger 1 or the Challenger 2 that don't have the acceleration, but once they're up to speed and going about 55 kilometers an hour, if you hit something, I've actually done over 900 damage with a ram before in my Challenger 2. So keep that as something else in the back of your head, that the maneuverability is something that you can actually use to your advantage now to actually ram something to death if they've only got somewhere between 50 and 100 health left because of your fast acceleration. If you hit them at 30 kilometers an hour, you're probably going to kill them. Now keep in mind, this is obviously useful in PvP too, and most people haven't really figured out that the ramming damage is really bumped up now with all the changes. So I'm just letting you all know that this tank, because of the speed it can get, which is well above average for most of the main battle tanks in the game, which usually have very slow accelerations but decent top ends. This actually has very fast acceleration and a very good top end. So keep that in mind. Ramming damage, very good. So overall, what do I think of this tank? Well, it's a Russian tank, just like all the other Russian tanks. It's very similar to the T-90 series. It's very similar to the T-72 series. There's really nothing of a major downside of this tank. I mean, it's just like every other Russian tank, but it is a premium Russian tank. So it just comes down to stylistic choice. This thing is very strong in its tier as long as you're good at angling that front end and keeping your sides from being exposed. I mean, you're not going to side scrape in this tank, but you do very well in this tank compared to like a T90 in some cases and some of the other T72 variations, even the T80s, because you do have so much ERA on this turret and on the front half of your sides. It's advantageous to rush in and bully other tanks, especially ones that have rockets, because most of the time your ERA is just going to take it out, and that's usually better than them shooting at somebody that doesn't have any way to defeat the missiles and they take full damage. The Leopards are very much a big target in the game now for the rockets, because some of their tanks, like the tier 10 especially, don't really have much ERA, and if they do, I've really had a lot of trouble deflecting shots without it. So that is another advantage. Like I said, it's fast. It's got extremely good damage. It's got lowish DPM, but you do still hit like a Russian tank hits fairly hard. And with the armor on the front of the turret, it becomes very easy to bully tanks. You got the low profile that all the other Russian tanks have, which is, again, very useful for getting around the battlefield and not being spotted, or at least being able to use cover in other places that most of the other larger tanks, like the M1A1 series or the Leopard series, can't really use as effectively. Do I think it was worth the price tag? With the bundle that it came with, I mean, I liked it. I think the tank is really good. I think it was worth it. But because, again, it's coming with this damn bundle stuff, and even though the bundle wasn't necessarily a bad thing, some premium time, some credits, some gold, it's still not quite there. If they bring it back, and it's really hard to guess at what they might do for the price, but if they were to sell this tank individually for right around, I guess, 9,000 gold, I don't think that's a bad price for this tank. I like the Russian line. It's the first line I went all the way down, and I've had a lot of fun with it. But for the price tag that it had, let's check out what the pricing is. So again, you're going to be, I mean, if it's a 9,000 price on this tank by itself, or maybe a little bit underneath that, I mean, you're going to spend anywhere between $30 to $50 on this tank. That's getting up there more like the premium tanks from Mortal Tanks, but do keep in mind this is a tier 8. Most of the premium tanks are not and have not been at tier 8, even though we do have some tier 8s and even a tier 9. But these are usually special kind of tanks down here, so keep that in mind. But overall, I like the tank, but it comes down, if you're a tank collector, of course you're going to grab it. If you've already gone down the Russian tank line, there's no reason to get this tank. It really isn't, unless they sell it in a package deal that's really cheap on the gold. Otherwise, I wouldn't even bother. It's a good tank. It's not a great tank. It's definitely not like a Challenger 1 Wolf. It gets the job done, but so do all the normal Russian tanks. If you really haven't gone down any of the Russian tank trees, then sure, you could jump in. This is a very good representation of how the entire line generally plays, and it plays pretty good. But other than that, I wouldn't even bother. So now let's move on, since this is a review with all of the new changes. Of course, since it's a premium tank, Commander's always going to be Maximilian, and with all the changes, he didn't really gain anything better or worse. He stayed pretty much the same, getting vision range, increasing your crew stats, especially getting that vehicle repair rate is very important now, and even getting your crew leveled up even more quickly is always a good thing. Moving on to the crew. Off-road driving, I still think, is one of the best skills to have. Acceleration on off-road terrain increased by 10%. Always good to have for any tank. You're not always driving on a road or in the middle of a city, so 10% more acceleration, always good. Now here, hull traverse speed improved by 5%. I'm probably going to drop this at some point and replace it. Probably with battering ram, because, like I said, ramming damage in this tank is very good. Because it gets up to speed very quickly. Do not think that you're immune to damage when you're doing rams. It greatly depends on your speed, their speed, and how much heavier or lighter you are. So keep that in mind. You can still do a lot of damage to, say, a Challenger 2, but I wouldn't recommend it. You're probably just going to end up hurting yourself. So I would not take spin to win on this tank. I probably took it because I didn't realize my first time out just how quick the hull traverse is on this sucker. Getting on down here, quick draw aim speed. You wouldn't necessarily need to take aim speed on this tank either. The base aim speed isn't bad. I just do it because, well, I don't like to sit out very long aiming. The accuracy is 0.11, which isn't bad, but still that's not that great for taking snapshots either. If it was under that, if it was like 0.08, I probably wouldn't even bother with aim speed, because even with the circle being at its largest, it still would have been small enough to take, quick shots and snapshots with a good success rate. Do the twist. Turret traverse speed. The turret traverse speed is a little bit slow on this tank. I know that I said with the hull traverse speed the way it is, turret traverse speed doesn't really matter that much because you can just turn the hull, but that does increase your bloom a lot more than just turning the turret. So I would probably take, do the twist to get the turret traverse speed up just a little bit. Ammunition types. You do have 3 in this tank. You have your standard armor piercing, you have heat, and you have high explosive. Now, high explosive is useful now because of the extra fire bonus and the bonus module damage and the extra damage it's going to do should it penetrate any kind of armor. I'm still not taking it at this tier right now because so much stuff has enough armor that it's really hard to make an effective use of the HE. And the heat is not great anymore. A lot of things that do have ERA are going to resist the heat. But when it does penetrate and it's 20% more damage, if something has under 100 millimeters armor, which is most of the tank's sides and rears out there, especially like Stingrays or BMDs, something like that, or artillery, they don't have that much armor, so this is going to do 20% more damage, and it's got a 35% higher chance to cause a fire, and it does 25% extra module damage, so it's not that different than the high explosive. It's just the high explosive has a higher top end on the damage if it does penetrate. But the likelihood that you'll go through many tanks from tier 8 and up with HE, I would probably rather just fire the heat, at least for now, until I see that the HE has really moved, beyond what heat has. But for now, you pick your poison. You can carry a little bit of both. You can carry quite a bit of rounds. So if you want to carry some HE, you definitely can. Now, I mentioned this in a previous video where I was talking about some of the changes with the consumables. I'm taking the most expensive stuff because I'm crazy most of the time. But I suggest this. I don't know if you still get all 3 charges or if you can even use these in PvP. I would assume you can. I don't see anywhere where it says you can't. But basically, these are just upgraded versions of spare parts and medical kit that you can use 3 times in one battle. It does have a long cooldown, about 80 seconds. So keep that in mind. You're probably not going to use the first aid cabinet nearly as much as you will the repairs, because with the bots shooting missile after missile after missile at you, it is very, very likely that a lot of times you're going to be down a couple of modules. Sometimes it's just a gun sight. A lot of times it's your gun or your turret ring. So it's nice to have multiple uses of that. I'm also taking the energy drink. Again, you could take fire extinguishers. Fires are a little bit more common now, but not nearly as common as they are in World of Tanks. And of course, if you're going to be playing PvE, please bring one of these. You can use the cheapo to get some health back and all of your ammo, or you can use the really scary, expensive one It gives you a full heal on all of your ammo if you're alive. If you're dead, you can respawn with 60% of your health and 100% of your ammunition. Um, that's a give and take. If you're surrounded and your team is sitting 300 meters away sniping and you're just taking a pounding right in the middle of a cap circle, it may not be to your advantage to just heal right there. It might be better to let them kill you so you can respawn and get some distance and get a better position after you respawn. So, a lot of uses. And of course, we've come to the retrofits that have changed dramatically because of the Balance 2.0 patch. But for me, I've started taking a lot of the improved spall liners to get incoming damage reduction. The improved one is going to give you 10% damage reduction, which isn't bad. Main battle tanks do have, in general, the most health, and being able to stretch that health out just a little bit longer, I think is really useful. Reload time. Every tank can use reload time. The faster you reload, the faster you're shooting, the higher your DPM. The DPM in this is, kind of bad, especially base. So putting this on this tank is a huge help. And then component repair speed. I'm putting this on here because a lot of times I'm taking a lot of component damage now. Since you're main battle tank, you're generally going to be taking the brunt of most of the attacks. So a lot of times your tracks are going to get blown off. Your gunner, your gun is going to get knocked out. Your sights, which really do affect your tank's vision range, get knocked out. You might get hit in the turret ring. You might lose your engine. There's so many ways to lose modules now, and your modules have just such low health these days with all the changes. That component repair speed, very nice to have on this tank. And if you have a tier 9 or a 10 tank, you will have an extra slot here. Depending on the type of tank that you're driving, you can fiddle around with, you can have hull traverse speed increased, you could have turret traverse, you could have better camouflage, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. I didn't realize that at first when I mentioned it in my video, but all tanks get 3, tier 9 and 10 get 4 retrofit slots. So in a nutshell, that is the T-72B3. I think it is a very good premium tank. I think it's a great addition to the Russian tank line, but it's not anything different enough to say, oh yeah, this one is completely new. It's so far off to one side or the other that I would definitely get it because it's so unique. It's really not that unique. It's just another Russian tank, and considering who the developers are, I'm not really surprised. I think it looks cool. I don't mind the paint job on this as much as some of the other paint jobs on a lot of the other premium tanks that you don't get to put your own camo on, but overall I wouldn't pay a hefty price tag for this tank. If you're lucky and you're in the Man O' War contest that they're running right now, you can check it out on the website. You could possibly win one of these. They may give them away in future contests. It may pop up in another package deal with a couple of other tanks. It's hard to say. It's hard to guess. I know it's tier 8, but again, if you're going to play a Russian tank, you might as well just play the T-90A or the T-72 or the T-80U. There's not a big jump in difference between them. This tank isn't really anything unique for a premium tank. It doesn't have anything that's completely different. So overall, I don't recommend this tank unless you're a tank collector or you just really want a Russian tank, but you don't want to play in the Russian line. Other than that, give it a pass. But anyway, I've got a replay to show you. It's one of the new PvE maps, and I have absolutely no idea where I was going or what I was doing, since it was my first time on that map and the first time driving this tank, so you're going to see some mistakes. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I'll catch you on the battlefield. And here we are on one of the new PvE maps. This is Leviathan. It's actually a pretty decent map. I like it. There's a lot of running around the map. You definitely need a tank that's not too slow, but you kind of need them anyway, even if they are slow, just because you do need some main battle tanks, because there are a lot of tanks to get thrown at you. I initially thought we were supposed to go over here because I saw that there was a circle and it says to defend this thing, so I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but it is not what I was supposed to do. In fact, you're going to see that there are flashing bits of the map there where a cap circle is being capped right now, and already we're a quarter of the way to losing the game already. Unfortunately, sometimes that'll happen. If your team isn't paying attention, you can get overrun very quickly on the cap circles. They have pumped up the difficulty on hard mode for sure. They have thrown a lot of tanks at people, and there are just times where people aren't paying attention, and it really does ruin your day to get in here like this. And you see that the cap circle is now nearly 3/4 of the way full. We do have a guy that must have known where to go on this map and how it was played. I didn't. This was my first time on this map. But you can see that what I was talking about with the speed of this tank. I am just rolling through all of the weeds and trees and going around right now over 60 kilometers per hour, and I'm catching up pretty damn quick. So the ground resistances, the whole traverse, the acceleration, the overall speed of this tank is very good. It shares a lot of the speed characteristics with the T-80U, which is the Tier 7 main battle tank. Now watch this. Yeah. Now at this point, I knew that if I rammed that guy, I was probably going to lose 1/4 of my health. That's why I veered off at the last second. And I wanted to kind of get hauled down a little bit. The gun depression sucks in this tank, but your turret is the strongest part of your armor on this tank, especially the front. You need to kind of get hauled down where you can. You can bounce the shots because of your ERA, especially if the bot is more focused on shooting you in the face of your turret. But overall, you're still going to want to be trying to angle your front plate. I tend to fail a lot of that and sit there like an idiot going front on just because I'm so used to the gameplay from before. So they're throwing tank after tank after tank, and a big thing now with the PvE is you gotta know which of the bots have the rockets. The rockets can do a lot of damage, and you're seeing that I'm actually deflecting quite a few shots right now that were missiles. Some of these tanks that do have the missiles, if your team focus fires them as soon as they pop out, you can do really well. If you let them just wander around, like I said, especially like say Terminators, they're just going to wreck your whole team, especially the people on your team that might be, say, tank destroyers. They don't have any anti-heat armor. They don't have any ERA. They don't have any extra plating to help deflect the rockets. They don't have an APS system. So you got to keep that in mind. You got to work together a little bit more than you used to. And most people have been working well together in the games that I've played. The ones we've lost were just, people not having map awareness or not knowing what's going on because maybe they're new to the game. So in PvE, a loss really isn't that big of a deal. You still can do all right as an individual person and on your own tank. But it's nice to get those wins out, especially if you use insignias to boost yourself up in the credit department or reputation department for one battle. And I suggest that if anyone has any crates, to go ahead and open them now that the patch is out, because they've increased the rewards. So you get a lot more credits, free experience, things like that from the crates, along with a lot of really good insignias that you can use to boost your tanks up for a battle and go from there. Again, you can see the speed. I tear through, the off-road terrain, the mud, the dirt, even off-road, going uphill. I don't lose a lot of speed. And you can see we didn't have people that were over here. Already the cap circle is this high, and I just have to run in here just to try to decap while the rest of my team, even the tank destroyers, are slowly catching up. Now you can see the penetration is good on this tank. It's not the best. You're going to have to aim for weak points, just like I did there on the Abrams. And he's just sitting there letting me hit those weak points, but then again, I'm also weak and took some damage pretty readily right there, and took another hit from him. And you can see the armor on this. He's hitting me in the hull. I'm angled down. He's got a good shots into my upper front plate. Now the front upper plate and lower plate are good against heat because you do have the ERA plating, but just straight on, straight up penetration, it's just going to go straight through either or, unless you've got really good angling, which right there I really didn't. But I was facing multiple opponents, and you can see that I really didn't come out too bad. I'm not dead, but I definitely took some major hits. And again, you can see penetration, even shooting the rear end of that sucker. Thunderbolt 2. It's really hard sometimes to get penetration. Now keep in mind, I'm using armor piercing. Armor piercing does lose penetration with distance. I don't really know how much with distance, but it's usually enough that where I think that I should be able to go through a tank ends up being, hell no, you're not going through that tank. So it's all down to your distance and picking the right ammunition type for the distance that you're shooting. Obviously heat won't lose that penetration, but if you're hitting ERA, it's probably not going to work whatsoever. So again, the ammo types actually do have a very good purpose now. They're very specialized based on what you're fighting and the distances you're fighting. So I kind of like that change overall to the gameplay. So I already had to use my repair kit. I healed myself because I took a couple of hits and went down low enough to where I was probably going to end up being a one-shot. I didn't really think about respawning on this map because I didn't really want to end up back somewhere too far away from the objective here, just because of how quickly the objectives can be lost. You can see that no one decided to go and get any of the secondary objectives, so we're not going to get nearly the experience out of this game that I would like for completing those. But it's overall to try to keep everyone alive, even though we've already lost one guy in the Bradley. View range is now very important. Main battle tanks are, I mean, you can see that even though it looks like I can see pretty good, camouflage is now a huge factor, and even though I can be right within spotting range of some tanks, I may still not spot them if they're behind cover, if they're behind a bush or a tree, if they already have naturally high camouflage values. It would take even more view range than I have to see them. So a lot of these bots, you might have games where you're literally this close to a bot and maybe you don't see him until he fires. And you can see I cannot find a weak point on the front of the Leopard 2 A6. So you can see that more or less a lot of the armor changes that went in, getting rid of the modifiers and stuff like that, you can just see right here. I literally cannot get through anywhere on the front end, and I'm looking very carefully for weak points, and there don't seem to be any that I can go through. So yeah, I mean, they did take away the modifiers, but they just gave you a full-on buff to the armor itself. So with the different shell types having strengths and weaknesses against different armor types and the different angles, I mean, you can bounce a lot of shots that I think that maybe you couldn't before, and maybe you won't bounce quite as many as you used to. So you can still see the main battle tanks definitely still have the armor advantage, and at least in the front for the most part. I mean, even the T-72B3 here has really good turret armor in the front, and I don't remember a battle, even in this one, where I got hit in the front and got penetrated. But, you know, it happens. I mean, no matter what you can do in a battle, no matter how hard you try, eventually you're going to get penetrated, and that's just how the game works. The bots either get lucky or they have some extra penetration because they're AI, but overall, I still think that the game changes they have made haven't really destroyed the game, at least not for me personally. I mean, it's just it's going to take some getting used to, of course, because, well, there's a very big bunch of changes. But as you can see, as long as you're using teamwork, I mean, you can still make everything work. I'm still bouncing shots here and there. Obviously, if I get it hit in the side, it's not going to do any good. My gun got messed up. You can see that the module damage has been increased, so it's much easier to lose your modules like your gun and your turret ring, especially because, you know, you're getting hit a lot more with a lot more anti-guided missiles. So I would expect if I'm getting hit with missiles that you know, at some point either my turret ring is going to take some damage or my gun is going to get broken. And there you see that I used my repair kit, and now I have no more repair kits. I actually used all three and got my gun and my turret ring fixed. Now, I had no idea whether or not I could even get over there from here, and you can see that my gun depression is lacking there as I'm wobbling on the hill here a little bit. I just didn't know what to expect. I didn't know where the tanks were going to come from on this part. I didn't know if I was better off actually being over here like this and sniping, because it's much easier to dodge and bounce shots from some distance. So the bots are going to aim for specific places, but if you're far enough away, if they're firing armor penetrating rounds, there's a good chance that by the time that they get to your tank, it will not be able to penetrate your armor. So all those things, you got to keep those things in mind. Even with the changes, there are still things that do make sense, and it's just going to take a little bit of time for me to adjust, especially, and probably for a lot of other people. I think the game has gotten a lot more fun, and I really like the new PvE maps. I've played on all of them now, and I think they're pretty good. I thought this one was pretty good. It's kind of hectic, and of course, I think it looks good. It's raining. It blocks your vision. There's a lot of stuff to shoot. And then basically, it's just a lot of fun. I did have fun. If I'd known what I know now, I probably wouldn't be in this position. You don't want to be in a position where you can get easily surrounded, especially by the bots. Now, initially, of course, it looked like everything was coming from this direction. That's why I came over here. Now, if I had paid attention and had map awareness for myself, I would have seen that there was an enemy tank that was spotted behind me, slowly coming up behind me, and I would have realized, oh, they can come from there too. But we've already lost 2 guys, and what I've got left on my team is a tank destroyer and an artillery. Now, artillery, I don't mind so much. As long as he's in a good position, he can really rack up the damage. The artillery is more akin to the World of Tanks version now, where they do massive amounts of damage, but unlike World of Tanks, they have very good accuracy and much faster reloads than ever before. So they can and will wreck a lot of tanks as long as you can stay alive and help them out with the vision. That's what they're trying to do, and I feel for the guys. They're pumping in as much as they can, but I've already taken so much damage that these guys came up behind me, and I took a hit, and then I got penetrated by the BMP and died. So that was just bad positioning on my part, but you see that we did hold out long enough to actually win the game, and that's always a good thing to have a bug there. By the way, I got blue star, I got shooter. Not the best of the team, but it's hard to well, I did get first in the damage, but you see even artillery came in second. Now, yeah, not everyone on my team survived. I bounced a good chunk of damage. Overall, the tank did pretty well. I mean, especially considering this was my very first time out in this tank. I had no idea what to expect from the characteristics. It was a brand new map. I didn't know where anything was going to be popping up. And even if it wasn't a brand new map, even the old maps, they've changed where the spawns are and when you get attacked and how many tanks they throw at you. So overall, I think the game is really good. I think the tank is good, but I think all of the Russian tanks of that ilk are also good. It's just this one comes with a hefty price tag or part of a package deal. And if you're a tank collector, sure, go ahead and get it. It is a premium Russian tank. If you enjoy playing tier 8 Russian tanks, you might as well play the premium one so that you're earning more credits and more reputation. That's the whole point of playing the premium tanks. It doesn't really have a downside. As far as I can see, it's fast. It's got Russian gun characteristics. It has some good armor, especially if you can go hull down. It has ERA, so it's just a well-rounded vehicle. I just don't think it's worth the kind of money they've been asking for it. I don't really think it's worth 9,000 gold, but if that's what it is, as long as it comes with some premium time and things like that from here on out, I think go ahead and get it if you're interested in that kind of tank. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I wanted to get this video out a little bit quicker, but I just didn't have the chance. I really wanted to focus in on the patch and the mechanics and try to play as many tanks as possible throughout PvE and see all the maps and start getting the mechanics and the changes down before I really put my 2 cents out there about this tank. I didn't want to just half-ass it. I wanted to try to be as objective as I could be after putting in several hours of gameplay with it. But that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, if you enjoyed it, if I helped you out, please press the like button down below. It really does help out my channel. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel, you can click down at the bottom of your screen right now, and that'll get you all the latest updates every time I upload a new video to my channel. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll talk to you all next time.